The property market at the moment is buoyant, certainly in relative terms. We have obviously endured a long period of time whereby there's been some sort of broad political uncertainty, which has manifested economically and certainly within our market. I'm pleased to say that the election result in December, there's certainly a marked uplift in respect of activity within the market. That's undoubted. The number of inquiries that we received during the back end of December, and that has certainly continued into January, which is obviously a very positive sign for the outlook during 2020. Yeah, look, I think first and foremost, the suggestion this is a post-Brexit environment is probably a little bit premature. Yes, I understand the kind of furore that went along with the 31st, and obviously we've endured a long time of kind of sort of perpetuity, if you like, in respect to some sort of conclusion. I think as a result it was received as much as that. I think in reality, yes, technically we have left the European Union. Obviously we've entered what is being described as a transition period. That will continue for, as a minimum, till the end of this year. The suggestion obviously by the current Prime Minister and the government is that they'll be pretty steadfast in that timeline. I think as most people would certainly love that to be reality. I'm a little bit cynical as to whether that's possible. It's a really protracted and detailed discussion that they've got to have, and an agreement that's got to be reached. And in comparison to other events of that nature, a year would be unprecedented in respect of a time frame for that to conclude. My opinion is that this is probably a good time to certainly be looking to execute a transaction. If you've got a vested interest broadly in London investment and or that of property, it's a very good time to be certainly actively looking within market and with a view to acting. I would base my opinion on the fundamentals of our market. I think it's inherently risky to make any kind of prediction. And that's sort of under a microscope if you do that in respect to short-term focus. There's a lot of variables and very limited, the odd sentence or sentiment here or there can have massive implications as to how markets react. There's going to be a lot of posturing during the negotiations with the EU, and there's going to be a lot of headlines that come out that will have effect on market and or market sentiment. For me, you want to cut through a lot of that. And I think the best thing to do is to kind of look at the annals of history, of time, and the London property market has been robust in that regard. Yes, we've had ebbs and flows, and we've endured a lot of economic and political events during the course of certainly my lifetime. The London property market in a broad sense, if plotted, it would be a hugely profitable investment. And I think that's the thing to hang on to. So my strong advice is for people to have medium-term outlooks and feel confident in that regard, and that's based, as I said, on the fundamentals of and or history of the market. Yes, I mean, look, if you were an investor who, and to clarify that obviously there'd been a suggestion in the Conservatives manifesto that there'll be additional 3% taxation. If you were exposed to that potentially, yes, it's something that should be considered. If you have the ability to make a decision and the means to make a decision and act before that's brought in, before that's actually part of any budget that's made, then naturally it would be a very sensible thing to do to avoid the scope for that. In real terms, I wouldn't let that overly influence your decision. I think that if we go back to the level of capital appreciation that we can expect across medium term plus, which again is hugely debatable, but in my view, you'd have to see it medium term breaking at something like 4% per annum for me. I'm not suggesting that'll be the case in the short term, but loosely over the next sort of 5 to 7 years, I think that's a pretty realistic estimate on capital appreciation. So, a 4% per annum would a 3% taxation defer you making that decision? I think if it was a short-term investment, yes. You couple the existing associated costs of transacting. Clearly that would be something that would perhaps prohibit investment, but as long as you've got more of a medium-term mindset, I don't think that's going to have drastic implications.